welcomed at our Nouveau podcast, the podcast that models healthy communication for men, empowering them to start their journey of self-work. Now here's your host, Thomas Pierce.
Welcome in, everybody. You know what time it is, baby. It's Thursday. It's time for a red-hot new episode of the Nouveau podcast. So let me tell you a story. A few weeks ago, there was an immense rugby match played in Fresno, California, between the Fresno Golden Dogs and the San Francisco Fog. And after the dust settled, the two teams were enjoying some adult beverages, and I met a very interesting guy. We started chatting, cool life story, very articulate, great personality. Occasionally, I'll just invite random people on the show, and the hit rate or the success rate's pretty low because most people don't want to just hop on a podcast and talk about their life and their trials and struggles and what they've learned and everything they had to overcome to be the person they are today. But not this man. So I guess this week is Marlon. He and I met playing rugby, and we really had an awesome conversation where he got really honest and clear about his process of eventually acknowledging his mental health challenges as a young adult, so 22 years old or so, growing up in a environment where that wasn't permitted or it wasn't even something that was seen as real as having mental health problems, and then realizing as a young adult that there was a whole bunch of trauma to process and decisions to be made about values and how to steer his own life from that moment forward. If there are men or women or anyone in your life, but especially for men, I think they'll find this relatable, who need some modeling of it's okay to talk about things. It's okay to acknowledge your feelings. It's okay to acknowledge that you are human. Send them this episode and it will have a positive impact. So a big thank you to Marlon for coming on the show this week. Thank you all for listening. If you haven't, please give the show a rating on whichever platform you listen on. Go play rugby. If you're afraid of getting injured or you've had too many concussions, go play touch rugby. It's so great. Best sport ever. All right. Roll it. Marlon, what's up, man? Good morning. Welcome to the Nouveau podcast.
Morning, brother. How you doing?
Excellent, man. Thank you for taking the time on your day off to have a chat. So where are you driving to at the moment?
So I'm headed to Anaheim right now. I'm going to go to Disneyland today, and then tomorrow I'm going to visit the Van Gogh Submersive exhibit. Try to see some art stuff.
Oh, nice.
Should be fun.
Yeah, it's really cool. Actually, I just read recently that Van Gogh wasn't well known or famous during his lifetime at all.
Really?
I think he sold one piece while he was alive. Everything else was after his death.
I had no idea.
Yeah, kind of interesting.
It is kind of interesting. So there's the Van Gogh exhibit and the Picasso exhibit, and I really wanted to see the Picasso, but she wanted to see the Van Gogh. So here we are. You know how that goes.
For sure. Happy wife, happy life is the.
There you go. That's what it is. If she's happy, I have no choice but to be happy.
Awesome, man. Okay, so we played some rugby the other day, and afterwards I was talking to you, and you're a really interesting dude, and you were open to coming on the podcast. So I don't want to reveal too much of the story, but definitely excited to kind of crack that open. Just to be fair, I just want to acknowledge that you did absolutely skin me for about a 50-meter try at the end of the game.
Yeah, that was fun. No, I had a ton of fun in that game, man. You guys are a rowdy bunch.
Yeah, it was a good game. A consolation try for you at the end. Mm-hmm. after a thumping victory by the Fog.
I had to call my other wing to switch sides because I really wanted the plays. Yeah. You don't understand. The only thing that I know how to do is make plays. Because I played college football, so I really don't know how to do anything but run. That's it. I haven't quite learned the game yet. So I started playing in the summer, right? I started playing in sevens. My first time ever playing rugby was June, July.
Awesome. That's really interesting, man. So how do you like it compared to football?
I love it. It's everything you want from a sport. I mean, and it's a lot less. Football's a little coddled. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rugby, it's full go in rugby. I really enjoy it. It's a really good outlet as well.
Interesting. So you describe football as coddled. What do you mean?
Well,
Yes,
I mean,
totally,
so
what do you mean by the yeah?
So American football, right? Well, and maybe I didn't really understand this until I played rugby. Really, I thought back in the day when I was really wanting to play football, and when I went to college for it, I thought that was just a tough man sport, right? And then switching to from the dynamic of fighting, and then taking what I learned there and transitioning it to rugby. Rugby is the ultimate sport. You have everything in it. And you don't have pads, you don't have a helmet, you don't have shin pads, you have yourself and all the bodies on the field with you, and that's it. I love it.
Nice. Yeah. So maybe closer to martial arts then, in that sense.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wrestling going on for sure.
Yeah, I know. I got suplexed.
I saw you gator rolled, suplexed. It was a hot mess on that field.
Awesome, man. So you play for the Fresno Golden Dogs, and that was actually your club's first league game in NorCal, which is awesome.
Yep, we're the first men's club in 50 years.
Wow.
So it's we're really actually working on it. Our coach built that program from the ground up. He invested blood, sweat, tears, and all the money that he could muster up. You know what I mean? And so it was a really big deal to us, and it was a really big honor to share that moment with him, really, because he works so. Like I said, I'm a very new rugby player, but that man's been playing rugby his whole life. So to kind of go out there and win, lose, or draw, we went out there and we played, and we made history that day. And you guys were a part of that. We were a part of that, and I'm really grateful. And I know he's really grateful, and the team's really grateful.
Totally, man. Yeah, it was such a wonderful moment, and for us too, a really big moment because we have been on the losing end in our league for a really long time. This is my fourth season with the Fog, and before Saturday, that was my second league win in 4 years. And so from a club's morale perspective, if you're not winning, it's like we're competitive people. It's like we're doing this because we're athletes and we want to compete and we want to get better. And so for so many years to just lose, it's so brutal. So for us too, it was a big deal because there's a lot of new guys in the team, a lot of guys who are in like their first or second seasons playing. And yeah, just to kind of get that confidence and get that affirmation that, we can win. It's a big deal. So we met in Fresno. That's where you live, where you're from. Just wanted to ask a little bit about, who are you and what are the kind of experiences and milestones that led to, the person you are at this point?
Well, that's an interesting question. It's funny you asked that. Recently, so I'm one of those people that, you wouldn't expect to have done the things that they've done and been where they've been. My friends and I have a joke. My rugby buddy, Jay, our team captain, I don't know if you remember him. The other day, we had a game in San Francisco, and it was a tournament. And we're driving up there, and I'm telling him things about me, and he goes, "Nothing surprises me about you anymore. Like I keep finding out a new thing every day." And it's kind of funny that you asked that question. So, yeah, I started. Let's see. I grew up in Clovis, California. Right. I went to Clovis High. I wrestled my whole life, and then once I got to be a sophomore in high school, I started doing martial arts. So, I was really dedicated to martial arts for a while. I have 2 black belts right now. So I have one in Taekwondo and then one in Kempo Karate. American Kempo, that is. There's a difference between Chinese, Hawaiian, and American. But And then I played football. Wrestling was my main sport. I was really good at that, but I didn't like the politics involved, and so I had to stop. I actually, the school I wrestled for was number 1 in the nation at one point.
Damn.
And so, yeah, they're pretty good. And so I went to football. So straight after high school, I went to college. I played college football. I was an English major, actually. So shortly thereafter, right after graduating, I went into the police academy, right? And it was around the time where, so I don't know if you know anything about policing or anything, but there's what I like to call a pendulum, okay? So this pendulum is either in favor or not in favor. Well, right now we're in a time where it's not in favor, of course.
Right.
And back at the time, for me, I wanted to be the difference. I wanted to be the one that's swaying the pendulum towards us, right? Towards people that are wanting to make that kind of difference. And so I went through there, got hired by the sheriff's department, had a couple different offers. Ultimately, when I was in the academy, I was 20 years old. Okay. So even after like doing that, I would have had to have waited about 6.5 months to turn 21 before starting on patrol. I made a wise decision, right? I decided that there was a maturity level and I didn't think that I possessed it at the moment. Okay. So I was always fortunate enough to have the gift of gab, right? That's my thing. I mean, it's not bragging if you've done it, but I've always had the gift of gab, so it's never really been hard for me to do things, right? And so I decided as an executive decision that it wasn't going to be for me. So I wanted to do something. I wanted to grow up. Okay. So in between everything that was going on in life back then, I decided I was going to join the Army. So I went and I did that for a bit. And that was quite an experience in its own right. So growing up, I grew up, my dad was a single dad. Okay. So the only thing that I really saw in life was how to work hard, what discipline was, and stomaching everything, taking everything and locking it up. Lock that up. You're not crying. We're not doing any of that stuff. And that was just the example that I had. And so when I got into the Army, I discovered something, right? And what I discovered was mental health, because I didn't really believe in depression as a young man, or even well into my 20s. Like maybe I was 22 when I discovered what mental health really was and how it affected me and how it pertained to me. So I remember when I was in the Army, there's certain things that usually happen that didn't happen to me, right? So number one, you're usually never alone. You usually have bunkmates, roommates, things like that. And so outside of basic training, and I went to my first schooling station, which was Fort Lee, Virginia. And it went to a point where instead of having 3 other guys in my room, I was alone, and which is really kind of unheard of in that situation, but it happened to me. And I sat there in that tiny room with those 4 walls and those 2 extra beds over there. And I really had to look myself in the mirror, and I found out really quickly I didn't like that. There's nothing like being alone with your thoughts and yourself to really kind of just snowball effect into maybe depression, maybe anxiety, all of the above. And so that happened to me. It was at a point where I was so depressed and I didn't even know it was happening. Because again, remember the example that I had, it was, you better keep it pushing. And it got harder and harder to do that. So I decided I needed to talk to somebody, right? So, of course, we got really good doctors in the Army. So I went and I talked to them, and I told them, I gave them my life story, sat down with a therapist and then a prescriber. And it turned out that I had some diagnoses that I would have never otherwise known unless I was alone like I was and just spiraling out of control.
And so far from home.
And so far from home, so far from anyone that really cared about me, because, I mean, it's easy to feel like no one cares about you when there's no one there.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And, I didn't have a support system like that. So it was tough. So they diagnosed me, right? They gave me depression, adjustment disorder, and OCD. Okay. So the adjustment disorder, because I had a hard time transitioning. The OCD, because for one of two reasons. Not just like the OCD where I have to have everything neat, because I do, and if anything's moved, I kind of lose it. But I do this thing in my mind where I'll take a scenario and I will play that scenario out 1,600 different ways. And they told me, that was obsessive compulsive disorder. And I'm like, wow, I would have never known. And so back when I was a young man, I remember they said I had ADD, which, I mean, all kids have ADD, I think. And I was on Ritalin, I believe, and it turned me into a zombie, so my dad didn't like it very much. So he took me off, right? And so that was my first experience with medicine. And so when I got, diagnosis, I got prescribed, they told me, okay, we're going to try the main three. They treat for depression, and, some of them treat other things, like some of them treat depression, anxiety, and so on and so forth. So we started with Zoloft, and I found that Zoloft didn't really work for me. So then we transitioned to Wellbutrin, and that really wasn't working for me either. And so I had decided that I wasn't going to take medicine anymore. Okay, so we're going to fast forward a little bit. I get out of the Army, and I start working a job. I worked at Target. That was my first job out of the Army. Now, I developed a really bad drinking problem because the medicine wasn't working. And that was all I had to be, okay again.
Right.
So, it got to a point where I was waking up at 8 and that was the start of the day. I'm drinking until sundown. You know what I mean? And it was that way for a long time. And so I went and I talked to another therapist, okay? And they were like, hey, we're going to put you on a new medicine. We're going to give you lithium. And I'm like, lithium, isn't that for... Now I know I got problems, but so we tried that. Yeah, are you sure? So I tried it, and that was my turning point, right? Excuse me. That was my turning point. That's when I decided, okay, something's got to be done here. So, for me, dealing with the mental health and the issues and the trauma and the childhood, what it looked like for me was accepting that there is mental health and that there is issues. And once I did that, once I really sat down and said, okay, you know what's wrong with you. You know why, right? I had to sit there and really just play everything that's happened in life. And I had to, sit there and go through this and fine comb it and pick and pull and probe and prod. And I came to one conclusion. One, mental health is not really a joke, and you need to take care of it. And two, I'm not like most people. I'm built a little bit different in the regard that me accepting that, me opening my mind, expanding it, researching and understanding this led me to be able to really be okay in a sense. So it got to a point where I don't need this medicine. What I need to do is acknowledge it and acknowledge that I have feelings and acknowledge that there's things that are wrong that happen to me and things that are wrong that I've done and things that are wrong that have been done to me. And that's okay. I'm not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I found it, I found once I opened my mind, expanded it, understood, I really became okay again in that sense. And then it got to a point where I was able to advocate, right? I'm really big on advocating because I know what it's like to be at the lowest point in your life. You're on the floor crying in a ball because life has just kicked you. And I found it really easy to express that to other people and help them understand and really just be there to listen to them and give them my take and relate, because I haven't met someone I couldn't relate to yet with a story. So. I mean, I guess I'm only 25. I got a long time. But
wow, man.
Hopefully, but yeah, it's yeah.
What a journey you've been on the last 5 years.
A little bit about me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a little crazy.
Okay, there's so much there. Dude,
crazy.
Thank you for sharing that and for articulating so beautifully.
Yeah.
Everything you just said is exactly what I am trying to get on record and share, because there is this whole machismo thing, and you identified it exactly. And looking back, right, like your dad, single dad, he's working to keep everyone together. He's working to keep the roof over the head and try to raise you into a good person, and he's dealing with his own stuff. And so it's just like, yeah, I can see why it's kind of easier to just pretend like nothing happens or not acknowledge it. But we all know, like we are all walking around bearing our experiences, and ignoring them, pretending like they never happened, isn't going to help.
Exactly. That I can tell you.
Yeah. Dude, that's so interesting. So, okay, I want to. So if we bring it back, so now, for example, let's say that instead you grew up with the lock it up kind of modeling. So now it sounds like you are a role model of sorts for your friend group or your teammates, guys you train with. You are there for them if they have problems and they want to talk. So how do you normalize it for them? How do you make them feel like it's okay and make them feel like it's normal what they're experiencing?
I think one thing that everyone needs is to know that they aren't alone in that, right? You're not the only one going through it. And I think the biggest thing is relating and saying, hey, I see you, I hear you, and I acknowledge you. And let me tell you about me. We are one and the same, I promise. You know what I mean? I think that's a really big part of it. It's like, even from my friends. I think acknowledging that and understanding it and letting them know that you care. I think that's one of the most important things you could do, especially for your brothers, as well as any other human being on the planet, but especially my friend group. You know what I mean? There was, I think, the lowest I have ever been in my life, right? I went through a really bad breakup, okay? And at the same time, my friend went through a really bad breakup. Actually, my roommate. And we had this thing. We were extremely depressed, and that was we thought we had met our people, he did meet his person. I thought I had met my person, like my human being that I was going to roam the earth with forever. Okay, and Right. Real biblical, I guess.
The English major coming out. I love it.
No. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I thought that I had found that. I didn't. I didn't. And, it ended up ending, but I thought, well, this is the end.
Right.
This is the end of the world. I think we've all been through that one breakup. You're like, oh, no.
Yeah.
And so we were really depressed, right? And again, that was a point where we were, waking up and I'm pounding liquor. Like, there's liquor in my coffee, there's liquor in my water, there's liquor in my liquor. Okay. And I ended up taking about a month off from work or not a month, maybe 2.5, 3 weeks. So like maybe a month. And it ended up, down that rabbit hole. What we did was he was going through the same thing at the same time. So what we did was we got together and we started watching anime, something so silly. Like, I've always been kind of into anime, but never really took the time to watch it. But that was our thing. We got a show together. Okay. And we just watch a show, we'd binge it. And that was how we spent our nights. And that was how it was okay. Because when we weren't, together doing that, we were drinking ourselves into the ground or crying on a floor. It was really that bad. And there were even times where we would box each other, just to feel, what I mean? Just to feel. But it made it better knowing that I wasn't there alone. Right. That was the point of that whole story. Right. I don't need you to know about my worst breakup of my life. What I need you to know is that I got through that. I got over that mountain. It wasn't even a foothill. It was a mountain. Okay. I had to climb that thing with a pickaxe, the whole deal. Mm-hmm. I got over that because I had someone right there with me. I had a soldier with me, a brother with me, a teammate with me, I had them right there with me, telling me it's going to be okay, me telling them it's going to be okay. When he's at his lowest, I'm picking him up. When I'm at my lowest, he's picking me up. And I think, to answer your question, and I'm going to sum that all up for you, we need to know that we're cared about too, right? Chris Rock, I don't know if you're into stand-up or not. Chris Rock had a special called Tambourine, okay? And he said, men are the only things that are loved conditionally based off what they can provide, right? Women and dogs, that's unconditional love. You love your dog. Women, you don't expect anything like that. But men, I think it sometimes falls on us, or that's the dynamic that society has created, right? That we have to provide, we have to hunt and gather, and maybe not anymore, but you know what I mean? We have to do that, otherwise we're not worth 2 cents, and that's not true, right? That's just not true. We're just as important as anything else, anyone else, and I think we don't take care of ourselves enough because we don't know. You know what I mean?
Totally.
We don't know.
Yeah.
We know
there
are
a lot of women. Yeah. I think there are a lot of women who would say they feel like their love they receive is conditional on their appearance, and their youth. Mm-hmm. But I still agree with the sentiment because, when I look at the older men in my life, it seems like there was this kind of unspoken contract of, as long as you provide, everything else is absolved. As long as you earn money, then you're good. Like you checked the box, as opposed to having responsibility for, other areas of life, like emotional development or, being a good role model in some way. And then also, it sucks because if someone can't do that, say someone, fails or gets fired or has a setback, then they, as a man, can feel like, if that's the only kind of component or pillar of their identity and that goes away, then they're pretty fucked. But yeah, I was just saying I agree with you, man. Like having our identities kind of pigeonholed in just that one thing of being a provider is not helpful, because shit happens, companies go down, people get sick.
Yep.
And if that's the only thing that is kind of that men have been conditioned to be as their identity, then yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, man. So I do want to, you mentioned you have a black belt in 2 disciplines. So I just wanted to hear more about that. So what are those martial arts again?
Yeah. So Taekwondo, which is basically just kicking.
Mm-hmm.
It's an Olympic sport. And then American Kenpo Karate, which is it's a form of karate. Now American is the least prestigious, as opposed to Hawaiian and Chinese, of course. But it is what it is. So yeah, I got black belts in those, but I'm mainly just a stand-up fighter. I just like to stand and bang out. Coming up on the 26th, I'm fighting for my second title. So right now I have the 150-pound lightweight title, and then I'm going up to the welterweight division to fight for the 170 title, and hopefully have 2 at the same time.
Holy shit. You're going to go up 15 pounds?
Yeah, I'm going to go up 15 pounds. Oh, well, that's not really that hard, because I almost have to kill myself to get to 155. It's bad.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's tough. So this 170 is heaven sent. I mean, that weight's just falling off. I figure I started about 198. And then for me, it's just getting up off the couch and working out. I'll shed 10 pounds, no problem. So sorry, lady's in the passenger seat. She looks at me like I'm crazy because she's mad that I could just shed weight.
Right.
Yeah, no. So I'll shed that 10 pounds easy just from working out. And then the rest of it, I started intermittent fasting.
Yep.
And I lost 6 pounds. I'm waking up at like 181 right now, and I haven't even started my weight cut yet. So it's going to be really healthy. I'm really excited.
Nice, man. So what are the, I intermittent fast too. I think it's great. It keeps me super lean for me.
Yeah.
So what are the differences then in going from those 2 weight classes, like the athletes you're facing and the style of fighting? What are the differences?
I really think, and I don't mean to brag when I say this, but I am abnormally strong at 155 because I'm tall for 155. I'm 5'10". So, and to put it in hindsight, do you ever watch UFC?
Yeah, I'll catch the highlights.
Okay. So Khabib is 5'9". Conor McGregor is 5'9" on his best day, right? I'm 5'10". I'm a big 155 pounder. And so that 15-pound transition. Now, what I give up is sometimes a little bit of power in the 170 division, because back in wrestling, we used to say, a good 170 pounder probably walks around about 205, 210, right?
Right. Okay.
So, I'm giving up a little bit of power, but I can make up with speed and cardio. That's what it is.
Okay.
Speed and cardio.
So generally no one like puts on weight to fight. They're always cutting to make weigh in.
Yeah, the only time you'd put on weight is probably as a heavyweight. Or if you're doing what I'm doing and going for a second belt, then you're gonna. But heavyweight, because heavyweight, the cap is 265. So you got some heavyweights that they'll 220. They'll put on a little bit of weight. They'll put on a little bit of weight to give themselves that advantage. Like Tyson Fury does that, and he does it well. He puts on a bunch of weight to outweigh his opponents, and then he just kind of hangs on them while he's fighting, and then carrying all that weight on you is just atrocious. It's so hard to. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad.
And so this belt you hold and the other one you're going for, this is in This is in MMA, and which which like competition or which
So the organization I fight for is Valley Fight Series.
Nice.
Down here throughout California.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the organization I fight for. That's where I hold the title, and hopefully a second one pretty soon.
That's awesome, man. Okay, you also mentioned the pendulum of policing. I think that's a really interesting one because I actually had a guy on who's going to be on the week before your episode, and he was a police officer from Ohio, and I asked him some questions like, why is it that police agencies investigate themselves, and this whole thin blue line concept of not informing on other officers when there's been a deadly use of force, those kind of things, and got his perspective. And I think it's interesting that you said it was a wise decision. Is that because you weren't ready, or is it because looking back now you don't think that lifestyle and that career is something that you would be happy in?
I think I'd be the best cop. I think I'd be the best cop. And I think what my goal was, my goal back then, I wanted to be internal affairs. I wanted to police the police. Okay. I wanted to spend my 2 years in the beat and hold myself to the standard that I believe, I wanted to live it, right, and then go police the police the way I know I was supposed to be doing it. However, I don't think that I was mature enough back then at 20 years old or even 21. I don't think that I was mature enough, and that's why I didn't do it. But like my coach, that I've been with for, one of my coaches at least, that I've been with for 7+ years, he was a cop, Marine Corps. I know a bunch of police. Obviously, because I was in that dynamic for so long, that was my life. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think I just wasn't mature enough. You know what I mean? And that's a good decision to make because you see all these things go wrong. Yeah. Right. You see all these. You got someone who's trigger happy, and God forbid a child like me at that time. You know what I mean? And then I make the wrong decision. I have to live with that for the rest of my life, and I wasn't going to put myself nor someone else in danger like that. You know what I mean? It was just a wise decision.
Yeah, yeah. And so how about the Army experience? I've had friends go in who needed a reality check and needed some humbling, and they got that. I've had friends go in who were kind of wild and nothing could contain them. Their parents can never contain them. School can never contain them. And then, they kind of got some structure and shapened up a bit. So what did that experience do for you? And I have more questions about that, but we'll start with that. What did the Army do for you?
Not a thing.
Okay.
Not a single thing. To be quite honest with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Not a single. I didn't have the same experience, right? I was stationed in Fort Riley, Kansas. And that's not the place you want to be when you look like me. Yeah. I don't just mean a full beard. I mean, you get me. No. What the Army did for me was it made me keen on mental health. That's what it did. Right. One of my really good friends in the Army, he killed himself, right, on home soil before any deployment. So again, one of the rugby guys on the team, he's in the Navy, and we're talking about it, and we're joking about it. It's not really a joke. We're talking about, we're like, there's not one person in the military that hasn't thought about killing themselves. And it's, the environment that you're in, it's hard. You know what I mean? I guess like any other profession, it's difficult, and it really feels sometimes like no one cares about you, and there are a lot of suicides. You know what I mean? And that breaks my heart because...
Totally.
That breaks my heart. Before you even get there to where you're in those trenches, you're fighting a battle within, and nobody knows it, right? If I had known my buddy was going through stuff, before we found him hanging from the shower, it might have been a little bit different. Excuse me, allergies. no, yeah, it might have been a little bit different. You know what I mean? There's a battle within, and so I'm grateful for the experience because it made me aware of these things. It made me aware. It made me realize that, hey, you need to deal with this before you spiral.
Totally, man. I'm sorry that you lost your friend, man. That's fucking sucks.
Yeah.
But we're doing something about it, right? We're putting the message out there that, the people aren't alone. And, the analogy that I was taught when I first learned about mental health and particularly suicide is that, a person who's in crisis, they are looking through life as if through a straw. They can only see through that straw, and it's impossible for them to take away the straw and get the full view. And yeah, I think that's a good kind of analogy to understand what people go through and how desperate, it can really be. So you also mentioned your battle with alcoholism and excessive drinking, and there may be people listening who are dealing with substance abuse or on that journey, So how would you encourage someone who is dealing with that to approach that problem, that mountain that they have to climb?
It's a good question. It's hard for me to answer that question because, I lived it and I was there, but I have a really, I'm a cold turkey kind of guy, right? Mm-hmm. I have a will that's that strong. If, for me, if I wanted to stop, which I did, one day I decided I can't do this. I can't do this. So I think my advice would be, if you do have that struggle with any substance, I think first, maybe talk to a friend about it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't jump straight into, NA and AA, and because that's scary, right? That's scary when you have a problem. I think first talk to somebody about it. Talk to someone who cares about you, and let them know that you're struggling. I think admitting is always the first step. That's what, acknowledging that there's a problem. It really does. Even if you don't stop, it does wonders to just know, hey, this isn't good for me. And I need to change it, or at least get a little bit better each day. I think, and I also think they need to understand that the small battles are wins too, right? There's this, one of my favorite anime characters. He said this quote. He said, my goal is to be better than yesterday, right? If I can't do that, my goal is to be better than an hour ago, even 1 minute ago, even 1 second ago. Let's say you put that bottle down for an hour. You won, right? That was a win for you. Mm-hmm. No matter if you picked it back up an hour later, that's a win. And that's okay too. You know what I mean? Nothing just happens overnight. Nothing happens like that. It's a journey that you have to go on, and understand that you should be proud of yourself for even that tiny little win. That tiny little win that people won't acknowledge. You need to be proud of yourself for that. Because that takes a big person to do. It takes a strong person. And because, people have lost that battle, right?
Totally.
People aren't alive anymore. So if you can just, for an hour, for 30 minutes, be better than you were, put that down, put the drug down, that's a win, and you need to be acknowledged for it. Acknowledge yourself.
Totally. Fuck yeah. I love that, man. Thank you. That's such a good perspective. And I think that applies to any kind of positive change that we're trying to enforce in our lives, right? I think you and I grew up in the sporting environment, and you even more so than me, like, you know, extreme workouts and training consistently and mastering your body is such a powerful lesson. But even if it's getting fit, right, or improving diet, you know, yeah, like you're not going to be able to wake up one day and suddenly only eat, you know, starches and vegetables. Like, skip dessert.
I can't wake up and be vegan.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah. But like, if you skip the ice cream one night and you usually have ice cream 5 nights a week, okay, good. Like, that's a start, and be proud of that.
Exactly.
Own that. Yeah, I love that, man. Awesome. So, one more question before we get to the 3 things game.
Okay.
Something about your story that's interesting to me is that you had this openness to seeking help. In the Army, you went to the therapist. You open to trying medication. You know, I'm sure there's a million things that you tried along the way to get yourself to a good place, but you didn't have that modeling. So what was it that made you open to it? Because I think that's another big. If we can crack that open, I think that there will be a lot of men listening who can get themselves over that line.
I was terrified to experience this thing that you didn't believe in before, that maybe you weren't allowed to believe in, or maybe you just wanted to ignore it. To find myself curled up in that ball on the ground, panicking, and not knowing why, not knowing what it was, it scared the life out of me. Yeah? So I looked and I said, I don't like who you are right now. You need to talk to someone. Like, you need to figure this out right now. And for me, that was enough. For me, finding out what was wrong made it so I could nullify and, you know, cool down the effects. But the reason is because I was terrified. It terrified me. Growing up where depression wasn't real, you know what I mean? Which it was. Which it definitely was. Right. But growing up in a place like that where we didn't believe in it, or, you know, it wasn't something that we talked about. Right? I didn't even know that word existed till I was 22. Wow. You know what I mean? Like, you heard kids in high school say it and you were like, smile. As if. But, yeah, it scared me. And so, I mean, I guess to anyone that would be going through the same thing, it's okay to be scared. Trust me. I lock myself in a cage with a man who's trying to rip my head off. Fear's not really in my repertoire, but that scared the life out of me. And it's okay to be scared. It's okay to have that thing that you're worried about. It's okay. You don't have to hold the entire world on your shoulders. You know what I mean?
Totally. Awesome, man. Dude, beautifully said. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. It's a fucking inspirational story, man. Good on you.
Gotcha.
All right, 3 things game. So each get a question. Whoever's birthday is sooner goes first. So what month is your birthday in, Marlon?
October.
Okay. It's me. I'm next. Okay. Here is my question. What are 3 things I've learned about motivation? I would say that it really is the mind and harnessing the mind and not letting the mind tell you what your body can and can't do. For me, and even if it's not a physical task, but just pushing through whatever it is. Like, for me, it's like, I love the feeling of getting up early and working out very early. Mm-hmm. And if I can see, so that one would be the power of the mind. 2, I would think, is seeing the end goal and seeing the results I want and putting the emphasis on that rather than the barrier to getting there. So, like, let's say I want to be lazy, I don't want to get up and work out. I know the feeling of once I leave the gym or finish the workout in the morning and the sun is up, I feel the sun on my skin, I go get a coffee and I feel like a fucking $1 million. Like, that is the feeling that I want. And to me, focusing on the end goal and not focusing on how tired I am is more important. So, like, if you have the motivation, think about what you want and not about the barrier to get there. And number 3, I would say that it's really good to ask why. Like, if this is a goal or a priority, like for me to check in with myself, why is it? Like, for example, like this podcast, like what about this? Why do I put time into this? Why do I sacrifice personal time and time with friends and family to do this? Like, why do I, and make sure that those motivations are aligned with good reasons, and so I'm not just doing something without kind of being thoughtful about it.
Yeah.
All right, man. So here's your...
Well said.
Thank you. All
right. What does that say? You want to read that to
me? Yeah. Okay. What are 3 things you have learned about communication?
What are 3 things I have learned about communication? It's key. It's key. And especially with, things that you and I do, right? Rugby, we're on the pitch. Well, hey, I'm on your left. Hey, I'm on your right. We need to know that, right? Otherwise, what am I going to do? I'm going to run straight. I think communication is the most important thing. I think it's the most important thing in all aspects of life, right? Mental health, communicating with yourself, letting yourself know it's okay. Like we talked about, those battles, those small battles. It's key. You need to communicate with yourself. You need to acknowledge yourself. Communication in relationships. Oh my goodness. And by communication, I mean listening to what your lady says, or your partner.
Mm-hmm.
I think, besides being key, communication is really what keeps things moving, right? I mean, can you imagine a world where we didn't talk? We just walked around? I can't, right? Can you imagine?
You certainly can't.
Like, imagine a baby that can't cry.
Right.
Well, how do I know what's wrong?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Imagine someone, and also what communication is. It's global. It's in every aspect of life, the animal kingdom. Everyone communicates, right? We all have our own languages, our own signs. Mm-hmm. Animals can talk to each other. Elephants can remember everything. Communication is how the world keeps going. That was my 3rd thing.
Awesome, man. Dude, awesome. All right, Marlon, well, we're up on time, but thank you so much for doing this, man. You definitely, inspire me to be a better person, and thank you for sharing so candidly and openly, and I think there are going to be a lot of people who benefit from hearing this, so thank you, man.
Absolutely, I hope so. I appreciate you having me, brother.
Yeah. So you have your fight coming up. Is there any way that folks can check it out?
Yeah. So I can. Yeah. So there's a link. I don't have the link at the moment, but but it's going to be Valley Fight Series in Hanford on the 26th. So if you're close to there or not, let me. You can get tickets and watch. It's going to be a lot of fights on there and a lot of title fights too. So it's going to be well worth it.
Awesome. Cool, man. Yeah, I'll link to that, dude. Cool. All right, Marlon. Well, thank you, man. Right. We'll see you next time we play. And yeah, big congrats to the Golden Dogs as well, man. It's fucking awesome to see a new club in the mix.
Yeah, thank you. Looking forward to scoring on you again, huh?
Yeah. It won't be so easy this time, buddy.
Yeah.
Now I know.
I hope not.
Now I know it's coming.
All right. Cheers, brother.
Okay, thanks, man. Have a good day.
All right. Bye.